Welcome into K-State Online. I'm Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. Here we sit on a Tuesday. Nothing from us yesterday because I was actually in Manhattan yesterday at the press conference giving our fearless leader, Derek Young, the day off to recover from his travels since we made him suffer through the biggest disaster that Waco has ever seen by himself on Saturday. I don't think anything else bad has ever happened in that town except for maybe the founding of Magnolia and all their stuff that inhabits the cabinets in the kitchen that I'm staring at right now that probably far overpriced for what you would need them to be. Um, K-State, another loss, Drew. Not great. We unpacked it after the game on Saturday with Fan. I just talked it out, and I'm just still kind of in that spot where, and I think a lot of fans are probably here, where I just don't know what the point of moving forward is right now because we're not going to get the answers that we need this season, clearly, because you kind of need to know, like, what are you working with next year? And why would you want to kind of work with the same group that you have right now? Because we've seen what it's looked like over the last however long. K-State now at 2-4, worst 6-game start since 2018. That was Bill Snyder's final season. Didn't end well, obviously. They're 4-7 since last November, so there's a very real chance that they're about to play game 12 in this stretch, that they're going to be 4-8 over what a normal regular season looks like. And that's just not acceptable for K-State football, especially given the where the program was at right now and really who was leading it and the players that were on this team. Like, it's one thing if Chris Kleiman's first year had kind of looked like this, it would have sucked, but I think we kind of would have understood it. We've been like, you're just trying to reset a roster and all this other stuff. It's not going to be easy. But this is unacceptable for it to get this point. And I think Chris Kleiman knows that, but how do you fix it? And does it really matter if you fix it in this season, because you're not really playing for anything unless this team's going to win 7 straight games? And I'll tell you this much, I guess 6, 7, because you need to win the Big 12 title then too. Like, the problems that they have, if you're jockeying back and forth in 1-score games through the schedule you just saw, it's about to get a lot harder with what you have coming up. Like, TCU this weekend, better than Baylor. You get a bye week, and then you're walking into a bee's nest of people that are ready to beat up on you for the first time in 16 years in Lawrence. Then you're coming home and you're facing the team that looks like they're going to run away with the Big 12. You still have to go to Salt Lake City later in the season. So it's just, I feel kind of helpless talking about the Cats right now. So did you get anything that made you feel better about this season, but more so the overall future of K-State football after listening to Chris Kleiman yesterday?
Honestly, there wasn't anything like crazy that was said at the press conference that would make you feel better about this season or really going forward. But I think that's just kind of what press conferences are, and like they're not really meant for that. But for me, it's now about, okay, you're 2-4 right now. There's a lot of uncertainty about a lot of different things going on, but like it's more about now finding out who is good enough and who has a good enough that you want to keep them around for next year, because that's where college athletics is right now. You're not always guaranteed a spot back if you don't either have the right attitude, don't have the right work ethic, aren't good enough, or if you are good enough, I mean, you're still not guaranteed back because other teams will try and pursue you out of the portal or get you in the portal. So I think it's more about now just finding out who still wants to be here, who is good enough to still stay and has the right attitude and wants to be going and playing every day. And I think that's just kind of where you're at, because I think that when a lot of teams now are 2-4, you're probably going to see some of this at like the Penn State and Texases of the world, who had national championship and Clemson national championship aspirations. And then Penn State's 3-2, Texas 3-2, Clemson 2-3. Like, you're probably seeing the same things with them. Of like, now it's who is going to stick around. And that's just where it is. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that last week leading up to the game in Waco, that Chris Kleiman mentioned that Quay Moss is somebody that a lot of young players can learn from because he's been dealing with injuries and has been hurt, but it's never been a question that he was going to play and play hard. I think that was probably something said pretty intentionally about a lot of things that are going on. So I think that you're going to see a lot of things going forward. I mean, we've already kind of seen two quarterbacks play. I can't remember a season where 6 running backs have played, but we're there now. Like, I think that you're going to see a lot of different personnel. Dylan Villarreal played for the first time last week. Like, you're going to see a lot of things that I think are going to be new and not even really necessarily. I know that they always want to win, but it's not always going to be about now just winning games for this season. It's going to be about, hey, can we get this guy in, get his feet wet, see what he's like? Because they did that with Devin Vass when they needed a spark against UCF. And then he played the third most snaps out of anybody against Baylor and played well. So I think that you're going to keep seeing new guys come in that you probably haven't seen much of and just kind of see what they got. Because what do you have to lose at this point? The season is already, unless somehow you miraculously get to Arlington, is going to be such a disappointment for a lot of different reasons. So why not just keep putting new guys in, see what they have? And we're almost to the point where you could do that with a lot of freshmen who haven't played yet, and they'd still have all their eligibility. So I mean, we're kind of almost to that point.
Yeah, that's true. In terms of, because one of the things that was interesting yesterday was hearing some of the answers that Chris Kleiman gave to things to explain the why or trying to figure stuff out. And so like I'd asked him about the one score game thing because I mean we've talked about that. It's clearly a concerning thing right now for K State. You've played in the most one score games of Big 12 teams over the last 3 years, yet you have the second worst win percentage in those behind Cincinnati, who, as we all know, I don't view Scott Satterfield as some aficionado of coaching. Was getting texts all day Saturday from Alec Bussey saying Cincinnati's going to win this game, and Scott Satterfield looks like a clown in this thing the way he's managing it. Um, it and he talked about like it's not just one thing, which like that's obvious, but if it's so many of these things, like you got to figure them out at some point. And if it's not just one thing, like this is the third season that it's going on now. And so like have you the follow-up that I should have asked was, do you think, over the last few years you fixed any of those problems, and if new ones come up, like that's where I wonder when he's talking about that. It's like, okay, how do you fix that? Well, I also asked because I know people were curious, and like I'm curious too. It's a part of their obligation, on why he had not been doing his coaches show. And which, first of all, you're going to get nothing significant from the coaches show. It's a rah thing for a specific type of fan, of which I am not one. I have never intentionally listened to a coaches show from anybody. Does not interest me one iota. It's like it's just to get a certain type of people fired up, get the opportunity for them to, in a very direct way, hear from the head coach, get better stuff, whatever. And basically went on to answer talking about how like it was planned, but he needed to get opportunities for his assistants so they can go be head coaches one day, which I get to some extent. Now, look, from my point of view, I think when the season starts going the way that it does, you probably need to amend the strategy a little bit and be in front of that portion of the fan base, just to kind of be there. But then it got me thinking, because of some of the ways that he answered other things, either a couple of trains of thought. If you want to take, I guess I would say, the positive mindset that things are going to be done to kind of correct the problems for K-State football right now, and this is going to be a better team next year and moving forward, is that number one, he's doing that because he's trying to find these guys different landing spots beyond this year or in the near future, because maybe he doesn't think he wants to do this much longer. Now, I've heard from some people that they think that that is the case. I've heard from people that I would trust a lot more on it that don't get that impression. I don't think anybody knows, and I think it's probably going to be like a end of season debate for years to come until a decision's made for Chris Kleiman. When coaches get to towards the age that he's at and how everything changes, like I think it becomes a year to year thing where they evaluate it. I don't think it's going to be at the end of this year. So then the other side of that would be, okay, is he getting ready for significant changes amongst his staff finally? Because I know people have kind of clamored for that. I think that would be the more likely approach, is that you're trying to get these guys prepared to go find another job so they can move on, and maybe you don't even have to necessarily boot them out of here. They get their own type of job of some kind. But that's really the only thing that I could glean from it, is to try and be positive, because I just nothing's going to feel like it matters this season. Man, we've talked about this a lot already, but like the season was a failure and it was over when we knew it basically after the Army game. But you still had a few more chances, and they went out there and they lost to Arizona. It's like, okay, whatever. And you got one last chance to kind of reboot this thing. And they did fine against UCF. They were doing just fine against Baylor until the adults in the room screwed it up. And now you're just back in this spot where, like, how many of these guys are going to be back next year? How many of these guys do you want to have back next year? And so you have to think and plan about the big picture side of this. And that was where I was trying to decipher yesterday if there was anything that we heard that made me think, okay, could this happen? And given Chris Kleiman's track record at K-State, even the thing that I thought more would be more likely, like he's maybe going to reset the staff a little, reshuffle. It's probably not likely given how he's conducted business the last few years, despite what people thought. I mean, really, Courtney Messingham's the only hard decision I think he's ever had to make in terms of his coaching staff. And that was one that it made the decision to go win a Big 12 title. And I don't know that one specific decision like that is going to be the difference for K-State right now. And maybe more than anything, that's the concern, is that it does feel a little bit like Chris Kleiman's lost his fastball.
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. I mean, that is kind of stating the obvious at this point, because there's just so many things that happen game to game that even showed up during North Dakota, showed up during Army, really showed up during Arizona, that just told you that this was not a good team. They don't get out of their own way with penalties. It seems like every time that there's like something good happens, there has to be a penalty that let it happen. They allow too many big plays defensively. Weirdly, they kind of rely too much on big plays offensively. Like it's very weird, in a debate that you can have with what you want on offense, because I remember sitting here 2 years ago and we were all clamoring for the big play in 2023 because K-State's offense was almost too efficient that they couldn't get big plays and they didn't have enough playmakers. Now they have a lot of playmakers on their offense, but they aren't nearly as efficient and don't have nearly the same success rate that they had in 2023. So a little bit odd there, and that's kind of been the same trend that K-State had in 2024, where they couldn't really sustain drives. It was get a punt, maybe get a first down or 2 first downs and punt. Then you get the ball back, then you get a big play, then you get another big play, and then you punt, big play, touchdown, punt. So it's a little bit interesting on how that goes. Defensively, you're still allowing too many big plays. K-State cornerbacks still haven't had an interception since September 28th of last year, which is insane. Like, it's always been safeties. Even like Daniel Cobb's safety last weekend. Even Kenigel Thomas takes more reps as a safety, and he's the one that made a big play with a forced fumble. Like, the corners, I think, have been fine, but you'd want them to have more than one interception in a 365 plus day stretch. So that is an issue. The pass rush has been inconsistent at best, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better. We didn't really hear about what uh, is ailing Tobi Osunsami, but like if he can't go, that kind of gives you some uh, little like it makes you feel a lot worse going into the TCU game with Josh Hoover coming into Manhattan. Um, Linebacker play, Austin Romaine has been solid. He was not good against Baylor, but had probably the best game of his career against UCF, and then wasn't very good against Baylor. Offensive line, they can't find 5 guys that can play consistently. And before the season, we thought that they were going to play a lot of offensive linemen because they had a good 5 and then could spell those guys with like 2 or 3. It's not the case. Like they are still trying to find a 5 that work. I already talked about that 6 running backs have played this year, and I can't remember a time where that has happened where it hasn't been like due to like major injuries to everybody. Like Dylan Edwards has been in and out of the lineup with injuries, but like nobody else has been good enough that they can consistently be the number 2 or the number 1 if Dylan Edwards isn't in. Avery has been solid. He has had times where he has been amazing, and then look poor and do that in like the same game. Like he had some throws against North Dakota that were great, some that were not so great. He had some throws against Baylor that were awesome. And I was ready to come on here and talk about how awesome he was against Baylor. And then you got the pick 6. There are so many things that this team just can't get out of its own way that I don't know what you would even try and fix first.
Well, and that's why I think it has to be like decision related in some way to like, uh, uh, I mean,
But
I've
even decision related, I don't know which one you would want to do first.
well, and that's why I think like you're not going to fix it over the course of this season. Like it, it's got to be the personnel involved in making those decisions. And you know, the players have changed over the last 3 seasons. The roster in 2023 very different from the roster in 2025. The constants have been the head coach is the same, and then a lot of the position coaches are the exact same. The defensive coordinator is the exact same. The only real difference is that Matt Wells is calling plays now. Um, and then that just happened this year. And I think that's where like when you're thinking about how these changes interact, like you can maybe try to do things differently, but a lot of these guys are doing things this way because that's who they are. That's how they're wired to be, and their philosophy on a lot of this stuff. So like that's why I think it's unfortunate for Chris Kleiman that he's going to have to make these decisions because I really do think he's in a position right now where it's either you change things up after this season or you're never getting better again at K-State, and this is who you are. And maybe you'll get lucky and get to play a schedule against teams that are all really bad, so you're not as in many close games. So you get a lot more UCFs on your schedule than Baylor's and TCU's. But that's just not really what the Big 12 is. And so I that's why I think you look ahead to you're going to have to make some uncomfortable shakeups, I think, to make this thing better because over the last 3 years, the players have changed and a lot of the same problems still persist. This team is shooting themselves in the foot. It's looking a little wonky at times. And then when they have the chance to close things out, they're not getting it done. Think back to 2023, the first game in this stretch that I've highlighted here that counts for this on the road in Columbia against Missouri. How many times did the offense go back out onto the field with the opportunity to either lengthen the lead or go out and win the game, put it away, finish it off, and they barely even moved the ball. They weren't even able to get in the field goal range, and it bit them because Missouri was able to have just enough. Harrison Mevis hit the long field goal, and now I'll never forget that guy's name, which is unfortunate. And
Even how bad that Oklahoma State game was that year, K-State still had the ball with a chance to go out and tie it at the end.
yeah. Yeah, and then you think the Texas game that ends up in overtime that season. and they're they come up short there when it's right there for them. The
And
Iowa State game.
and could have won that game in regulation in 23.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes on, and we've seen it now. But like a lot of those guys are different, and that team had more of what I think this team is missing, which is like the player led program thing's been brought up a lot, and you have to have the players to do that. 2023, I think K State still had the players to do that. Cooper Beebe was still on the team. Will Howard was still on the team, and there were other guys that you could look at and say, oh, they're going to step up. They're going to do this thing. Austin Moore was still on the team. You don't have that this year. But even with that, and why I think that was a problem earlier in the year where they didn't handle some of their adversity well, and where they, I think they kind of just thought, well, offense isn't going to be very good enough, Dylan Edwards, whatever. And they kind of shut down. Now they've overcome not really having that adversity, and they haven't gotten help from their coaching staff. And that's where I think the role of coaches in game, yeah, obviously they're calling plays, they're doing all this other stuff. They have to manage it in some way. But how you really get the sense of these coaches, not just guys that are running programs, because majority of the time, 75% of the time, that's really what the judge of these coaches are. It's not what they actually do as a coach in game. It's how they run a program. How are you recruiting? How are you getting the foundation for all this stuff and getting prepared going into the game? But where you have to really show your coaching chops is in these close ones. And are you going to be able to sneak this thing out and find a way to get it done? First 4 years of Chris Kleiman's career, he was able to do that. It was over 500 in those games. And I would say most of the time you're going to want to be 500, give or take a game or two. But now it's swung the other way where he's not even close to that. And you look at who's at the top of that list of winning the one score games now. And I mean, I go and look, and it's Joey McGuire, oddly enough, at almost 70%, Matt Campbell, Kalani Sitake, and Kenny Dillingham. Those are the top four coaches over the last 3 seasons in the Big 12 at winning their one score games. What do those 4 teams have in common? Well, Texas Tech looks like they're going to win the Big 12 this year. They're damn sure going to be in Arlington. Iowa State was in Arlington last year. BYU could have been in Arlington last year if the tiebreaker worked out their way, but they had the record that Arizona State and Iowa State had to get there. And then Kenny Dillingham won the dang thing last year and also almost won a college football playoff game. You go and look at the company that Chris Kleiman's keeping at the bottom right now, Scott Satterfield. I think he's not very good. Lance Leipold, who's gotten the tag of not being able to win these close games. Sonny Dykes, who, serious questions about, was that just the luckiest of all luck years, his first year, because there haven't been a ton of great performances from TCU since then. And then Deion Sanders, who is notably a terrible in-game coach. And that's kind of the thing that I look at and I go, well, that's not really where you want to be. Something shifted there. You want to be able to press those buttons, because that makes the difference. And it's just not happening right now.
I also think that the thing that you see with those 4 teams isn't just like the success that they've had. It's one of the first things that you hear about all of those teams is how they are culturally, from anybody that's really in them and sees them as that's like the number one thing that they talk about. So I think that's kind of another thing that can highlight the top.
It feels
4.
like there's a lot of energy with those teams, the coaches and the players right now from there. And you think then about like K-State, where not that like they're down or negative about like what's going on, but you don't get energy from K-State football right now. And in some ways that's probably bled over into games because we've talked so much about, they come out looking flat and they don't like. That's where you might need to have a little bit of an adjustment. And we've talked about it so many times because you've got a quarterback that's a cool customer. Avery Johnson doesn't lean too far one way or the other. Chris Kleiman, same type of deal. Joe Klanderman, same type of deal. Matt Wells, like all these guys are very mild-mannered and like they don't lose their cool in any situation that we get to see them. Like behind closed doors, yeah, I'm sure it happens. but like that doesn't mean that that's actually who that person is. Like, yeah, I got yelled at by my dad a few times when I was growing up. That's not the type of person that my dad is, though. Like, so you can get it in doses, but it needs to be who that person actually is. And it's just not what K-State has right now. It's just one of many things that is building into this. And like that's just the off field type stuff. Like there's talent things, there's philosophy about how you're playing and doing things. There's just so much going on with this team right now that like we could go for 2 hours today just picking out all the problems or trying to dissect what it is. But I think that the how close the games are, that's been something that I've just when you start losing those, it doesn't go well. And
No.
let me lay that out for you. Just a couple of comps on that front because I was going through and I was like, okay, this is something that I want to take a look at and see. Mike Gundy over his last 3 seasons because he was involved in these one score games for the coaches that have been in the league for at least the last 3 years. He was 6-6 before he got fired in those. You say, oh well, 500, like that's actually pretty good relative to what you may have thought. And like, is that really a drop off? Here's what Mike Gundy was in one score games from 2019 to 2022. He was 15-9 in those games. So they dropped all the way from a 625 win percentage to 500. You look at Bill Snyder, his last 3 seasons at K-State, he was 9-10, so 474. If you go and look at the 7 seasons before that, so this was all Snyder 2.0, his first 7 seasons, 22-12, a 647 win percentage in those tight games. K-State played in a bowl game. They had a bowl record every one of those years because we know 09 obviously they didn't because of the FCS double up. Those last 3 seasons, though, the record slipped 3-4 in 2017, 2-4 in 2018. They were 4-2 in 2016. And that kind of highlights the struggles that they had those last 2 years. And so a significant drop off and deviation from what they were. And that's where K-State is right now. Like they drop off from being above 500 to now being below 350 in winning those games. And I did the same thing. I went and looked at Jimbo Fisher, oddly enough, because I thought, like, who are some of these other coaches the last handful of years that have gotten canned in these situations? And Jimbo was one of those where the end of his career, it fell apart for him after starting off in a decent spot. So that's the other thing where, like, doesn't mean that it's the answer and it's everything else, but I do look at it and I go, like, is this a sign? Because we've seen 2 other guys that I would say are fairly comparable to Chris Kleiman as good coaches, have ran a great program, won Big 12 titles. They significantly dropped off their effectiveness in these close games at the end of their career.
Yeah, I'd say that the last point that I have, and it's the thing that has been like bothering me since the Baylor game ended, is that like you can see that K-State is playing a lot better, but like none of that mattered on Saturday just because of how certain things went. And like that is like the real killer to me. And what I think does just makes me like the most upset is that the team that played against Baylor would have beat the team that played Arizona by like 4 scores.
Yeah.
And it's just frustrating that it took that long for it to really kind of like click. And then now it's like it's too little too late. And that's where like when we started our live show in the post game, where like the first things that I really thought about were like Scott Frost, Nebraska, and then KU last year, because those are 2 teams and 2 programs that it like kind of felt too little too late when they started to figure it out. Like K-State is kind of in that boat right now.
Yeah. And like they've got it back right now, but with the way things are going, like how long do they hang on to it and keep playing that way given the circumstances? But we'll see. They get TCU this week, and TCU only a 1.5 point favorite coming to Manhattan for the 2:30 kickoff. Is that a reflection of like K-State recapturing and playing more to the form of what people expected? And is this where like is K-State being evaluated under the lens of they're really only what their last two games are because you've had a healthy Dylan Edwards and they've looked and it's felt different, it's been better. They just obviously blew the game in Waco. Like, what do you make of only a 1.5 point favorite for TCU? Obviously, you have to factor in the fact that they're on the road, but
I think it's a combination of K-State playing better and then TCU. I mean, you have it right there, 1-5 against K-State in the Chris Kleiman era, and haven't won Manhattan in nearly a decade. So it's probably a little bit of both.
yeah, I mean,
It would
TCU has not been great against K-State since joining the Big 12.
it would not shock me if K-State were to win on Saturday.
Yeah, I actually like given
And
everything that's happening, I kind of think that they do like being at home. Like the team that played on Saturday, like if they're at home, they probably win that game against Baylor. And that's the other thing that makes this all so maddening and hard to judge is that like yes, K-State lost to Army at home this year. They lost on the road at Arizona, who was pathetic and had a pathetic crowd there. But like you said, the team that played on Saturday in Waco probably wins by 4 scores in Tucson. And so like that's where this is a different team. Like it's many problems, like Chris Kleiman said. We are seeing the first half of this season has been defined by totally different problems than the last half of the
yeah,
season. You know,
yeah,
like
and I would even add that like I know that things are bad right now, but like I unless things really fall off a cliff, I would kind of expect more games, kind of like what we've seen, because there's only one game that I'm just like staring at that I'm like K State's probably losing that game, and then that's the game of Texas Tech. Like
well, let me
they
ask you this, Drew. How many more 1 score games does K-State play in this season? Six
there
games left.
6 games left. I'll say 3.
I'm going to go 4.
I'll say this weekend, KU and at Utah.
So you feel good about them winning by double digits against Colorado?
I think that's a game where I need to see where both teams are at going into it. Because that feels like that could be one team really doesn't want to play anymore and one team does. And that could be a blowout.
I think you're right. I think the near locks are this weekend, the trip to Lawrence and Utah. Those
Because
feel like those are going to be 1 scores, and then it's going to come down to I think there's probably another random one in there. Like they could very easily play up and like keep it in with Tech, or it could look ugly against Oklahoma State, or it could look ugly against Colorado.
because there is like Utah's probably the second best team, maybe in the Big 12, but it's not like I've seen anything from them to think that they're like significantly better than what K State is if the K State team that played against UCF and Baylor plays in Salt Lake.
If I know this is hard to do because you've seen it, you know what it is, so it's going to feel silly if you want to answer one way. But I'm just trying to get into the psyche of what the outlook is. If you only factor in the last two games for K-State, that team, because again, there's a very real chance that the team that looked like they did at the start of the year shows back up again and it changes the equation one more time. But the team that's played the last two games, what's their record over the final 6?
Their record is final 6 if they play the way they did the last two. It's probably 3-3.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that they were that good to say that they can flip it and go 4-2 over the last 6. And that's why we're like one of those 1-score games that I highlighted would probably go the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say. I mean, you are probably looking at like KU last year is a really good comp for this team. You look at what they did. They started their first 5 games. They were 1-4, and not crazy like They had a lot of close games in there. Lost by 6 at Illinois, lost by 3 to UNLV, 4 at West Virginia, got beat by 11 against TCU.
In a game that was a one-score game until the end.
Yeah, and then went back and forth, lost at the end to Arizona State by 4. They blew out Houston. Then they lost by 2 to K-State. Then they got on their roll where they beat 3 straight ranked teams, and then they flamed out at the end of the year like they didn't have enough gas in them, and they got blown out at Baylor to come up just short of bowl eligibility. That does kind of feel like the road that K-State is on here.
And that's where I also talked about during our live show about, like, if you have a season like this, you're probably going to pop up and destroy somebody that probably doesn't respect you. And that kind of felt like what KU did to Colorado last year, where they kind of punked Colorado.
You don't think the Colorado program had a lot of respect for the teams they were playing?
No. And the fact that the final score was a 16-point game last year when KU beat Colorado, but it felt way worse. And then, like I talked about again on Saturday, it's like, you're also probably going to come to a breaking point where, like, you just physically don't have enough left in the tank. And you're probably going to get blown out by somebody because you've played in so many close games and have had just such a roller coaster season. And that's exactly what happened to KU at the end against Baylor, when Baylor beat them by 28 the week after. KU looked incredible against Colorado. Like, there's going to be a time, I think, where K-State blows somebody out. And I kind of want to say that it's going to be somebody that we think might be a one-score game. But then I think they might get blown out by somebody that you're probably not expecting it to be.
Yeah. Well, we'll just see what it looks like.
Nobody would have thought last year, after KU won those 3 straight games against ranked teams, that last year's Baylor's team would beat them by 28.
Yeah, because you thought, like, okay, this team, like, KU had played legitimately well, like really good, like up to preseason expectations for essentially games 6 through 11 of their season. And you thought they're going to play the last half of their year the way that they were supposed to. They're going to get to bowl eligibility. Like, when a team that's playing like that and was as good as they were got to the cusp of that, you're like, there's no way they come up short now. But it had to have been that they ran out of gas or whatever it was, and it kind of stunned them and stopped them right in their tracks. So I don't know. We'll see how it works out for K-State, because again, this is where, like, the state of this program shouldn't be, oh, they made a bowl game, great, but like, you've embarrassed yourself so many times already this season. Like, there's one last thing that you can try to avoid, and that's like whiffing on a bowl game. So, like, I think this team desperately needs to go 4-2 or better over their last 6 games, just to save face a little bit. And, you can say you went out there and you fought and you didn't quit. But
hypothetical, scary, gross question. Would you rather go 2-10 or 5-7?
I'd rather go 2-10.
I think I agree, because I didn't even have the caveat of, I thought about if you were going to say 5-7, that it would have been 5-7, but you lose to Colorado.
Oh, geez. Well, yeah, I was going to say I would take whatever the other option is. There's a question that I would be entertaining to ask, but I'm not going to ask it in a clippable media form because people would shape the narrative to their liking, and it would not be, I guess, accurate to the situation, because some people have a better understanding of how college sports work and are supposed to work than others. So I won't ask you that right now. People can play with that one in their heads. I'll ask you it off air, just we can have that conversation and see what the answer is. Just know, if you're sitting out there and you think you know what I'm discussing, you're probably right. We'll have plenty of stuff throughout the rest of the week talking about K-State football. I do think at some point in the near future, we should probably be having TV designations and tip times for basketball games. The Big Ten today, I saw, had all their CBS games announced. My prediction is that K-State KU, one of those games ends up on CBS. Maybe K-State Iowa State as well, just like last year.
I saw ACC posted theirs, and then hilariously, because I think that SMU might play at Oklahoma State in like an exhibition or sometime in the regular season. Because there's the one thing that I was like interested in when I saw their schedule. It was the one time that they had that wasn't announced yet.
No, of course. The Big 12 is just keeping these games real tight to the vest. Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize this. I think I need to double check it real quick. K-State is still 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away from playing their first exhibition at Missouri. Um, Wichita State is playing their first exhibition, the only exhibition they're playing all year, mind you, or they're calling it a charity scrimmage. They're playing Drake this Saturday, open to the public at Coke Arena. I will not be in attendance, but
You could go and hate watch.
no, I mean, there's no reason to watch Drake anymore. Am I right?
Well, I mean, we're also 24 days away from K-State's exhibition against Newman, and there's not a time for that.
Yeah. Well, it's quick drive with the Jets. Maybe we'll be able to hitch a ride with them up to that game. Although the K-State did that better this year. There's a home football game the next day.
Yeah,
That's the Texas Tech game, I guess, right?
it is Halloween night. Is the night of the home exhibition.
Oh, well, I will not be there then because I have found out that for the first time in my home ownership life, we will be ready to hand out candy. Not looking forward to that portion of my life starting. And then I do think I will have to take the 2-year-old trick or treating for probably 10 minutes. There's only 3 houses on our street that are inhabited. So it's not going to take too long. Maybe we venture to go elsewhere or I drive her to see the grandmas at some point in the day. Let me ask you this, Drew, because obviously I don't have as good of a setup for recording as I once did now that we've moved. And so I'm in a different house and still having to work to finish the basement and everything. 2 questions. Number one, well, I don't know. This is really a question. This is more of a statement. The first one, we have neighbors behind us where there is an older woman that spends a lot of the day on the deck, just outside.
Yeah,
No matter the time of the day, the weather, out there a lot, just chilling, kind of fascinating. Anyways, relative to people around our house, what is the line of like the cutoff for okay, that's too many children. We don't like maybe we shouldn't be friends or get too close to you.
I mean, is there somebody that has like 6 kids by you? That's a lot of kids.
Well, growing up, we had a well, I was probably middle school when these people moved in behind us. They had a ton of kids, and it's like, you get to that many, you start to ask some questions. You're like, do we want like, can you keep track of all these? Do a few fall through the cracks, and like, are they bringing it all to the table? So yeah, I just was okay. I got your answer from that one. And just no offense to the families out there, because I'm sure there are some fine families that you've probably got 8, 9, 10 kids that everybody's just doing fine. You're a normal family. But I did go, I don't know.
I think it
This is me living in my 3-child household bubble that I had growing up. I mean, it's continued now that I have 2 kids. And I'm going, well, the next one's probably the last one. Maybe 4. No chance at 5. You can't live a normal life with 5. The world is not once you get past 2 kids, the world doesn't treat families of 5 plus very well. They're like hotel rooms, F you. Restaurants, you want to eat with your whole family? No, we only have four chairs at this table. Figure it out. Deal with it. Like
you do raise a very good point.
Yeah, I don't know. So the hospitality industry, as hospitable as they want to try to be, they don't really open their arms to the crowds of more than 4 in a family. So I guess I have the present to live it up with my family of 4 and just let the world treat me like a king until they say, oh, no, now you've passed that. You're going to be screwed. People didn't care about the last part. I know that. They don't like when we talk about other stuff. We'll talk about K-State some more tomorrow. Get into football. We'll do a recruiting update this week because it's gotten a little bit more interesting for K-State as they start to hand out more offers to guys that are committed elsewhere. With all the coaching changes that are happening or bound to happen in college football this year, there are decommitments that are becoming targets or once again becoming targets for K-State. So we'll talk on that at some point this week, and then we'll have the preview show for K-State and TCU. So for Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening to the KSO Show. Back again tomorrow right here. Same bat time, same bat channel.